Yo, what is up, boys? So yes, you saw that right. Merlin Fireburst can kill Galland in 24 seconds. She's really fun, she's really good, and she honestly buffs Escanor a lot, and she's a very fun spec to play, and I'm really happy to be doing this video about her. So today we'll go into detail on how to build your Merlin so that her Fireburst spec is good, it does a lot of damage, and you'll be able to do crazy things like kill Galland in 24 seconds. So let's get right into the video and let's go ahead and let's explain her abilities. So her passive, first things first, is Core Ignition. And this passive is basically what allows her to do a lot of the funny things that she does, which is give you a free ult every time you Fireburst. So whenever you have and play Merlin, you do want her to be the one to be on the field whenever a Fireburst is activated. Now I did specify that very specifically because you can use all her abilities, right? Her little tracking orbs, and we'll get into that later. But you can use all of her abilities, swap to other characters, and all that stuff will stay and be active. And then you can swap back to Merlin whenever it's about to reach max, and then obviously do funny ult stuff. So you don't always have to sit there and just auto attack spam on Merlin. You can when you're really high potential on her, you have a lot of attack because she does a lot of fire bursts with her normal attacks, but we'll also get into that later. But just so you guys are aware, this is a very, very, very important ability, and just so that you guys know, you can still use your ult whenever you have this up, right? So the way this works is that it replaces your normal attack and your special attack with a free ult, right? But you can still use your ult and consume magic points to press your ult, right? So just a little note there, you will be pressing your special attack or your normal skill to activate this, not your ult. That is very important because, you don't want to be using 3 ult orbs sometimes, you just want the free one. Next, we'll talk about her Q, which is very simple, Illusory Heat. And this ability basically just teleports you backwards, leaves a clone that taunts, and when they're in that little circle, it decreases their fire burst resistance. Super simple ability, not really much to explain here. You kind of just press it and forget about it. Next is her normal skill, which is Seeking Crimson, and this is the one that actually activates and does a lot of the burst gauge for her. She basically summons a ball of fire and it tracks and follows enemies for you. So this is another, you just kind of like press it, you forget about it, you don't really do anything with it other than press the button. You can have 2 of these out at a time, and they're both just like following tracking stuff, and it's really funny, honestly, and it's a kind of a no-brainer. You kind of just press both of them and then free burst. Now we'll talk about her ult, the big boy, Celestial Collapse. This is where all of her damage comes from, and this bad boy is amazing. You basically just summon a meteor from the sky and it just crashes on enemies, and it just does a whole bunch of damage, as well as giving you more fire damage for your team because it decreases their fire weakness. Now, small note about this ult, that just like Daisy's ult, the way this ult works is wherever the enemy is whenever the animation ends is where the ult is going to land, right? So I'm going to show you guys a clip right here of Daisy and Merlin both ulting the dragon as soon as he's doing his dash, and as you can see, both of their ults land on top of the dragon, even though when I pressed the ult, the dragon was in front of me and then he ends behind me. So small note about the ult, but very big, just so that you don't miss it and you don't start wondering like, where the fuck is my ult going? Next, we'll go on to her potentials, and I'm going to do this very similar to how I did it in my last video. I'm simply going to tell you guys what the breakpoint is for Merlin, and obviously because it's still Merlin, just like Cold Merlin, that breakpoint is going to be P7. Now I'll explain it a little bit more because her breakpoints for fire are slightly different. However, you still do want a P7 Merlin. So for fire Merlin specifically, the biggest ones are going to be P5 and P10, right? The reason why it's P5 and P10 is because all of her damage comes from her ultimate, right? And P5 and P10 both give you not only another ultimate, but additional buffs that come along with that ultimate. P6 and P7 are really cool because they do increase your fire burst, and they do help a lot with making her burst faster. However, making her burst faster is nowhere near as important as the just sheer amount of damage you get from dropping more meteors. So this is why for her specifically on fire, if you want her just for fire for whatever reason, the two breakpoints are P5 and P10. You either get her P5 or you go full P10. That's it. There's really no in between. You can, like I said, still go P7, but her fire spec will just be significantly worse. And it's not even a little bit worse. It is significantly worse. And the reason it is significantly worse is because P9 gives her a lot of ultimate damage. So P10 and P5 both basically double dip on that ultimate damage. So if you want a really good Fire Merlin, unfortunately, you are going to need P10. So small note, but again, big note, because it costs a big amount of money. And this is really a common theme with Merlin that I am not particularly a big fan of, is that Merlin is actually a very, very, very strong character. She's actually on par with a character like Meliodas. P9 Meliodas is a character that can clear almost all the content in the game, and very quickly as well. She's on this exact same level. However, most of her power is locked behind P10 on almost every single spec. Cold spec, it's a P9. Fire spec, it's a P10. And lightning spec, it's a P10. So two of her specs, and her strongest specs at that, are locked full potential behind P10. Whereas other characters like Escanor, you can get away with like P7. Characters like Manny can get away with like P5, P6. Daisy can get away with being a P5, a P6. So there's so many characters that don't require a lot of dupes in order to be good. However, she's just not one of them. She is going to be one of those characters that do require a lot of investment in order to make her very, very good. However, the payoff is that she is extremely good. When I make my lightning video, you guys will see exactly what I mean. She is exceptionally good at basically everything she does. However, you are going to need P10. And I'm not a big fan of this route they're doing, especially this early in the game, having characters that are extremely dupe dependent. This is completely fine for have a character be dupe dependent, but maybe a year or two into the game's life cycle. So early into the game's life cycle, 3 months in, I think we should be focused on just having characters that are strong at P4 and P5, because most people are just going to be pulling the one copy. There's too many characters that people want, there's too many sins that aren't out, and from what we've heard, there's going to be a lot more sins coming very, very quickly, and a lot of people just aren't going to be able to fully max out all of these characters. So sorry about the small rant, but those are my thoughts on it. Next, we'll go on to her best weapon, which is going to be, to nobody's surprise, the Black Flame Wing Staff. This is self-explanatory, not only because of the crit damage, but also because she is going to be the one activating burst every single time. So because of that, she can always have Black Flame energy passive up and rolling. So Black Flame Wings is just going to be the best, and I really don't see a weapon coming out that's going to replace this for a very long time. So it's a very safe bet. Like I told you guys in my cold video, you can just put Black Flame Wing Staff on her. It is good. It is, from what I've tested, the best actually. It makes her extremely good. And so you're perfectly fine to make a Black Flame Wing Staff for this support character. You have my go ahead. Now, since we're here, we'll talk about the enchantments real quick, as you can see it. So the enchantments for her from best to worst are going to be Fire Burst Efficiency, obviously, because she's a burst character at the end of the day. Fire Damage, Ultimate Move Damage, and then Crit Damage or Crit Chance. This one depends on how high or low your crit chance is on Merlin. You can get away with having less crit damage and more crit chance, just because you get a lot from the Black Flame Wing Staff, and you get a lot from her armors. So you can kind of get away with just either or. They're pretty exchangeable, and honestly, most of us aren't going to get all 4 of them anyway, so either one works here. Honorable mentions are going to be Fire Attack Increase. Next, we'll go on to her armors, and first we'll talk about her engraving. Now her engraving, she obviously doesn't have one yet for fire. So instead, you're going to be running the lightning one. Now I obviously do not have the lightning one on myself, but that is because I have no brilliant seals. I cannot make it. I am capped. I am waiting for tomorrow to have another one. The reason why you want the lightning one instead of the cold one is because both the lightning one and the cold one give you crit damage. However, the lightning one also gives you extra normal skill damage. So normal skill doesn't do that much damage, but it's better than the cold attack. But if you don't have the lightning outfit, that is perfectly fine. You can just have the cold outfit like how I did, and you'll still be good to go. Now onto the rest of her outfit. Now what I have is actually not what I believe is going to be her best, right? I just have a base setup for her because this is just what I have, and I don't have the materials yet to make what I actually want to make for her. So what I would actually make for her, if you want to fully build her out, is the Arachne set 5 set. Now specifically the 5 set, no higher. So what you want to do, and the specific combination that you want to do, is all of the armors, so the chest, the legs, the waist, and the boots, and then you're going to put on an Arachne ring. The Arachne ring, obviously being because most of us have a lot of these, and we can, pick around the crit damage, crit chance, the sub rolls on it, you can pick whatever you need at the time. And then the 2 set that you want is going to be the double set life set. Reason being is Merlin actually gets blocked a significant amount. I'm assuming because she's just a burst character. So whenever I tried testing other armors on her, she got blocked a lot just because I didn't have this set on. So I'd recommend that. Now if you don't want to have that and you're like, I don't mind getting blocked, I just want to do more damage, then you are more than welcome to just put on a double set corrupted set. Or if you want a little bit more fire burst efficiency, you could put on 1 twisted thought set or 2 of them, and then you could just put, the last necklace, do whatever you want. But the reason why this set is going to be her best is because, as I said earlier, all of her damage is her ult damage, right? So you want as much ult damage as humanly possible on this character. And lastly, we will talk about her best teams, and this is going to be extremely simple. If you are going to be running Merlin and just Merlin as your DPS, like how I was running in some of these clips, you are going to be wanting Merlin, Gila, Daisy, Manny. Now, I know some people don't have Daisy, so instead of Daisy, if you don't have her for whatever reason, you could just run Tiore, right? The wand one or the book one, whichever one you want. And if you want more damage, you could just then run Slater. However, I think most of us should have Daisy now, especially with the rerun, so those characters can just kind of go to the side. And now, if you want to use Merlin how she's actually supposed to be used with Escanor, then the team is going to be Escanor, Merlin, Daisy, Manny. And this is basically like a non-negotiable, like this is just the best team because it's essentially just the Escanor team, but instead of having like Gila or Tristan, you just have Merlin. Now, people are going to be asking, well, how does she work with Escanor, right? How much more damage do you get having Merlin on the team versus, when we didn't have Merlin on the team? Well, I'm glad you asked, and I already came prepared. So right here, I'm going to show you guys a small clip of me kicking Marmas' And just for reference, I ran this a lot with Escanor when it first came out and I first had my team going. And I've ran this a lot beforehand. The fastest time I've ever gotten without Merlin was 48 seconds on an Escanor team. That was about the fastest I ever got. I think I got maybe 45 at one point, but I'm not too quite sure. But it was in the 40s. And you can also use Escanor when you're fighting against the Golem. It will make it faster because the Golem has a lot of HP, and even my Merlin struggles to just kill it in 2 ultimates. So here is Escanor and Merlin beating up the Golem. How you play Merlin is actually quite simple. So all you want to do is tag in Merlin, then you want to dash into the target, because the way your taunt ability works, your special attack, is they need to be inside that circle for them to get the debuff, right? So you want to dash into them in order for them to get that debuff. Then you're going to go ahead and just spam both of your E's and then spam left clicks until they get bursted. Then you just use your free ult. If you're using her as your dedicated DPS, after your free ult, you then use your normal ult, and then you get 2 ults back to back. If you are just using her as a burst character, after your free ult is where you will swap to your DPS character, i.e. Escanor. And there's really nothing else to it, that's really it. Now for those that want to see my stat sheet, here it is. As I've told you guys before, my character is very much still a work in progress, but here it is for those of you that want to see. And that is going to be it, boys. That is how you build and play Fireburst Merlin. She's very cool, very fun, and buffs Escanor exponentially. Escanor is now extremely good if you have an according Merlin along with them. She does a lot of damage, she does a lot of buffs, she does a lot of needed help that Escanor needed. It's really unfortunate that our Escanor buff is essentially tied behind a P10 Merlin, but it is what it is. Other than that, you guys have a good rest of your day, and y'all have fun.